Alright, what's going on YouTube? Here it is, third qualifier decider game of Red Bull Wololo 3, the first qualifiers. Classicpro versus Vinchester, two clan members against each other, the Master versus Apprentice. Now they will meet here. Classicpro pulled a huge upset against Vilas in the previous round. Let's see if he can surprise his teammate over here. Quick look at the draft. We will have Tatars, Magyars, Portuguese, Byzantines, Vietnamese, Goths, Mayans and Cumans for Vinchester, Franks, Khmer, Slavs, Ethiopians, Bulgarians, Chinese, Berbers and Britons for Classicpro. And we do have game number 1 up already, so we'll jump inside. No matter what the outcome is for this series, I feel like this is already a huge achievement for the Salts clan, which is a clan mostly consisting of Russian-speaking members. So Vinchester is Russian, I believe. Dark is also Russian, who is a heavily improving player. And Classicpro is a Ukrainian player, fairly young. I think he's just basically at the beginning of the career. But one thing that makes these players very, very similar to each other is that they're all young and ambitious. In fact, Classicpro is one of the older guys in this clan. Vinchester is much younger than him, and Dark is like, I think Classicpro is like 25 years old, Dark is like 16, so all of these guys are still very young and ambitious, and they train a lot together. I am pretty sure that Vinchester and Classicpro train together before the tournament, because the brackets were only released yesterday when the signups actually and the check-ins completed, so they couldn't actually predict that they will be against each other. Oftentimes when two expert players train against each other, you train against someone that you are unlikely to get before the semi-finals or so. So like, if you expect or if you know that, hey, based on the seeding I will probably be up against Dogao in the second round, you don't train with Dogao. That's just standard. But here they are clanmates. It's very likely that they played a lot together, and this is why I'm saying that this is Master versus Apprentice matchup. Vinchester has been outstanding in Empire Wars in many tournaments. One of the fastest players out there, a player that is threatening to many high-level players as well, but a little bit inconsistent, has actually stepped his game up for some time. Classicpro, on the other hand, a player that is just about to start his competitive career, and something that we didn't really talk about at the beginning of this is that Classicpro earned a total of $300 in his Age of Empires 2 competitive career. That is like 3 or 4 years already, but it was mostly like very small tournaments and like community events. Nothing even comparable to such a huge event like Red Bull Wololo. And the thing is that if Classicpro wins today, and look at that, he actually won the Scout War against Vinchester despite being lower in HP. Beautiful micro. So if he wins against Vinchester here, he would get into the main event, and he would earn $600 even if he loses the first round of the main event. So he would triple his career earnings in Age of Empires just by getting into the main event. So regardless of what happens, I feel like this is already a highlight of Classicpro's career. But obviously, he's got ambitions and he wants to get into the main event. What I noticed in the one game I saw, the decider game between Classicpro and Vilas on Haboob, is that Classicpro's macro is insane. He's a fast player and he's really sharp. Like, reminds me a little bit to Leary, to be honest. He's not as good as Leary, but his playstyle is very reminiscent of Leary's playstyle. Has a very good aggressive playstyle, but more importantly, he has an insanely good macro behind that aggressive playstyle, and that's very Leary-esque. Anyways, look at that. He's taking this fight. We didn't talk about the fact that he's playing Ethiopians in yellow on the left, and Vinchester is playing Vietnamese on the right side in red. Vietnamese have extra HP on their archers and skirms, which helps immensely. Ethiopians have better rate of fire, and at this point, Vinchester does have +1 defense as well, not something that Classicpro would have, and we have a relatively aggressive feudal age over here. Classicpro is committing some to walling. I like this single archer from Vinchester being annoying over there. I could see a single skirm being dispatched to fight this one, but numbers are looking much better on the front line for Classicpro, and Vinchester is losing a lot of archers. The problem for Vinch is that he doesn't have one big group of archers. He has like units one by one, and it looks like Vinchester is being forced to make more and more skirmishers over here. I think that's already sort of an achievement. from Classic Pro over here. Let's see if either player starts adding a stable at some point so that they can battle the increasing amount of skirmishers. But that's definitely a possibility. Nice heal advantage over there for Classic Pro. Tries to get a good micro in, but trades 2 archers for 1 skirm, so that's not perfect. Vinchester is actually going to venture out for his huntables. Something that many players do in Empire Wars. Helps immensely at your early food eco. And now Vinchester is also going to wall himself off. Now, not sure what... Oh, that's so bad from Classic Pro. Now, this is a mistake that he can't actually get away with. Okay? The thing is that if he believes this is logged, that's a huge mistake. It's not even remotely logged, and he should be checking that, because it's a so big gap that it's not obvious this is logged. And I have a feeling that he thinks that it is closed, and he's gonna get surprised by that. Once again, I feel like the fact that Classic Pro always has the numbers advantage in these small fights helps immensely. So instead of him fighting against 5 skirms with his 5 archers, he's fighting against 2 skirms with 5 archers. So he's always able to take relatively favorable engagements over here. Vinchester getting an outpost over here, so he can see the movement of his teammate, who is right now his opponent. And for now, it seems like this army might actually get trapped in here. Not ideal for Classic Pro. Looking at the resources, both players are relatively close to clicking up to Castle Age. Classic Pro takes some acceptable engagement, wasn't anything particularly amazing, and it looks like he's heavy on the skirmishers now. Vinchester not adding any cavalry, neither is a Classic Pro. So basically, both of these players are playing with what is almost a pure archer civ and has pretty bad cavalry. So this might be a heavy archer fight, and it looks like Vinchester is going to have a slightly more balanced eco, and he's going to click up to Castle Age a little bit faster. Classic Pro had to make a market and balance out his eco, so he's going to be behind by half a minute. Probably won't change much, because he still has skirmishers on the field, so I don't think that Vinchester can actually ride a 30 seconds advantage to get any kind of advantage for himself. This is going to be troublesome though for Classic Pro. That stable could actually cause trouble for him, and I don't see him being able to respond to that anytime soon. What he should be looking for is now making archers and making a stable for knights himself, because he's gonna have better archers. Even though the Vietnamese archers have more HP, the Ethiopian archers will still be better. So he's the one that can decide engagements with his own archers, and then just force his opponent to go skirmishers. Vinchester dispatches a few archers to the left side to get some harassment done, but once again, I don't think that these guys are going to inflict a lot of damage, but they might be isolated from the rest of the group, and they might get picked off because of that. So I'm not 100% convinced that this is actually a good move from Vinch. It could work, and it does some idle time. The question is the life of 3 archers more valuable than some idle time? He's actually being very annoying over here to Classic Pro, that's for sure. But in the meanwhile, Classic Pro is going to have the archers on top of Vinchester's wood line as well, I believe. And meanwhile, these skirms will exchange fire in the middle. Vinchester's army numbers are slightly better, and Classic Pro is going to have to fall back because he is a little bit later to Castle Age in such a aggressive... Oh, that's good. This is so good for Classic Pro. This is so good. He doesn't have the crossbow just yet, but he's going to pick off... What? Classic Pro! What are you doing? You should be killing those guys. There is a knight on the way from both sides right as Castle Age hits, but that's already elite skirm as well for Vinchester. Crossbow Botkin on the way for Classic Pro over here, and also there are some knights on the field, but no elite skirm from him. They're doing the exact same thing, and I feel like Vinchester might be doing a slightly better job with this overall execution. Remember, this right side is still wide open for Classic Pro, and he knows about that. He just doesn't care at this point. Still, these crossbows could be annoying for Vinchester, so that's something to pay attention for. And there is +1 defense on those knights as well, so they could clean up those skirmishers. And honestly, I actually like the military positioning of Classic Pro a little bit better here. He's able to take a reasonable engagement over here, and he's also able to push the opponent's base. These crossbows aren't doing much, and they would be much needed here on the front line, because that is what you need to decide the engagement over here. And it's just 2 elite skirms right now for Vinch, who is forced to make full elite skirms now. Not ideal by any means. And honestly, even if Classic Pro isn't leading, I feel like Classic Pro is pretty much in this game, which is not something that I would have expected before this tournament started. Because I feel like Vinchester and Classic Pro are pretty similar players in terms of gameplay style, but I would actually classify Vinchester as a better player than Classic Pro. So they are probably trying to do the same things, but Vinchester is just doing it better. That being said, that's a fast ballistics for Classic Pro, and it looks like he's gonna continue with crossbows. Heavy skirmisher play from Vinch. So Classic Pro needs to start adding mangonels or knights to this one, because he's gonna lose all his crossbows to the skirmishers. And one thing that Classic Pro doesn't have compared to Vinchester is competitive experience in big stage. And in many scenarios that shows in the form of bad or slow decision making, and I feel like that could be the case here. That being said, that's full elite skirms, so like 2 knights can already inflict an enormous amount of damage on that. So, well, right now, if Vinchester is playing full elite skirm, this is still doable for Classic Pro, but Classic Pro is playing 1 TC, Vinchester is playing 2, so Vinchester is going to start having an advantage over here in terms of villager numbers. This is the fight that Classic Pro was waiting for. This is going to be a cleanup. Should be focusing down the crossbows first, because those deal a lot of damage to your knights, and you can clean up the skirms a little bit later. Nice micro from Classic Pro, drags away the low HP knight, another knight pops out. The problem is that, I mean, Classic Pro is surviving, and he's playing well. The problem is that he's not doing enough here to stop Vinchester. Vinchester is going to be on 2 TCs, and Classic Pro, he's trying to do the exact same thing, but he's only on 1. And that villager differential is just going to grow and grow and grow. And it seems like the more consistent production... Oh, that's actually bad from Vinch. That's way too much of a Q. He should have a third range up if that's the case. And for Classic Pro, you could actually make an argument for +2 defense now, because he's fighting against the more and more crossbows and elite skirms, so it would really make sense for him to grab +2 defense. And it looks like the first game is showing what I actually expected from this series. Vinchester and Classic Pro doing very similar things, but Vinchester is much better at doing those things, and that is what I'm seeing over here. Like, oh, that's so bad, an overchop from Classic Pro. And remember, he's probably very nervous as well, and I think, as weird as it sounds, I feel like Classic Pro has his worst opponent in Vinchester. Taps out, game number 1 in the hands of Vinch. So, it's always very hard to come up against your master. Classic Pro defeated Villes, and I think Classic Pro would have been better off with any other player other than Vinchester. Why? Because Vinchester and the Classic Pro are clanmates, teammates, practice a lot together. Right? And because of this, Vinchester knows the tendencies of Classic Pro, especially considering that Vinchester was the player that played on the high level for a long time and Classic Pro didn't. You can assume that Vinchester is the one that's practicing with Classic Pro and training Classic Pro. And typical Master versus Apprentice setup, here the Master is just going to be aware of the weaknesses of his Apprentice, and that's exactly what he's exploiting. Basically, the 2 players played the same strategy. Very similar. Clear archers, save archers and skirms into knights, but somehow Vinchester got a little bit better edge. It's not something that's enormous, but at the end of the day, it was small details that crippled this one. And we also shouldn't forget that at the end of the day, Classic Pro lost 13 villagers to Vinch. Many of them died over here, but it was just small details that decided the outcome. For example, that Classic Pro didn't have a perfect eco balance compared to Vinch, and because of that his castle age was delayed. Delayed by just enough to have Vinchester grab an upper hand with elite skirms and crossbows. How is Vinch playing in this tournament? Just tuned in. You mean, how is he performing in the tournament so far? Good. He's good. Just like you would expect from Vinchester. So, yeah, they were doing the exact same thing. Just Vinchester did better. If you look at the resources, I think that clearly tells that it was the same strategy. Same food, same wood. Better gold for Vinch and better stone. That is where that little advantage. It's not where the advantage came from. It is just what it shows. Over here. So, we're going to the first home map of Classic Pro. And One thing that I want to point out is that Haboob has been banned. Vinchester bans Haboob, and Haboob was the game that Classicpro was able to win against Villes to decide that series. So because of that, I believe that Vinchester believes that it might be Classicpro's strongest map, and that's the source of that ban. Classicpro can decide if he wants Acclivity, Lowland, or Atacama. Atacama is somewhat similar to how Haboob plays out, so I can see Vinchester, or I can see Classicpro going for that later on, and maybe taking that to a decider game if there is a decider game. Lowland, maybe. And Acclivity, I think it's a little bit too early for Acclivity. I think you want it to be a bit of a later game, because I feel like the way you play Acclivity depends heavily on how your opponent is playing a certain series. So I think it's nice to see the opponent's tendencies in a given series to determine what strategy to choose on Acclivity, if it makes sense. Alright, so lobby is up according to Robo, and they will jump into game number 2 over here. It's obviously, like, I feel like the fact that Classicpro is playing almost as good as Vinchester is already a huge thing for him, because I probably wouldn't have had Classicpro in my top 30 players at all. Maybe my top 50, like the bottom part of my top 50 would have been Classicpro probably somewhere. I don't have a top 50 list right now in terms of players, but yeah, it would be some around like top 50-ish if I had to say something. Whereas Vinchester is probably top 20 and sometimes plays like a top 10 player, so the fact that Classicpro can actually be almost as good as Vinchester is already a huge thing for them. And if there is a tournament or team game tournament coming in, then this Salts clan, Classicpro, Vinchester, and Dark, who also has shown insane improvement compared to his previous self in 2v2 World Cup, this is going to be a strong team. And I feel like we are seeing kind of a new generation rise. Players that could actually be in quarterfinals consistently in tournaments, I would say, in the next 1 year. So I think from like a year from now on, we could talk about Classicpro as maybe a player that is contesting quarterfinals or round of 16s consistently in tournaments, if he keeps improving at the rate he's improving right now. Obviously, he needs to keep in shape as well, so there's a lot of work put into that, but I feel like he is on a course to become a strong player out there. Anyways, we are gonna have Vietnamese crossed out, and we will have Ethiopians crossed out. Game number 2 coming up, and let's see what we have. Robo says they started, and we're going Acclivity. Maybe the reason why the tournament page is listed in the brackets command is because that's what holds everything other than this playoffs, and this was only added yesterday, so that's why we have that in the command. Anyways, we are gonna have Vinchester playing as red over here as Mayans. This is the first home map of Classicpro. This is Acclivity. Vinchester is Mayans in red, and other side we're gonna have Classicpro as Bulgarians in yellow. So we're gonna have Classicpro dropping a stable over here, so he's going to open scouts. I did have a theory about Classicpro maybe using Bulgarians on this map, but I just don't know why this is a thing. I think when Vinchester played Fire in the round of 16s this morning, and that was the series that Vinchester won and got into this quarterfinal over here, I think that Vinchester played Bulgarians here as well, but I can't figure out why. Like, what's... Oh, I'm starting to understand. Wait a second, this is something we didn't talk about in any of the games I casted. Look at where is stone on this map. Actually, there is stone. I don't understand then. I thought there is no stone because I was looking and I couldn't see it easily, but there's actually small patches of stone. They're just gray and they blend in with all these huntables and the foliage. But in that case, I don't understand. If this map didn't have stone, I would understand Bulgarians because the resources are scattered and you would want to TC them. But in this case, no idea. I mean, Bulgarians is a nice sieve. I just don't know what advantage you get from specifically picking Bulgarians over here. And Classicpro can kill the Eagle. That's a great start. That's a great start for Classicpro. Vinchester is going for some very small walls over here. And he's going for what is an Eagle plus Archer opening. But it's going to turn into a Spear and Archer opening against a player that is going Scout and Skirm. Scout and Skirm is something I prefer over the Spear and Archer formation over here. So this is actually a pretty good setup, I would say. For Classicpro, Vinchester is fully walled. He's got a small base over here. Classicpro is going for some somewhat greedy walls, if you ask me. And he's making archers. I'm not a big fan of that. I feel like you can't just go archers as your second building over here when you started scouts, because your opponent went to archers immediately, so he's gonna have better archer numbers. You have to open 2 or 3 skirms, so you can actually decide engagement. So you have like 2 skirms against 4 archers, that's good. 2 archers against 4 archers, not good. And this is why that is not something that should be done. As I said, the walls were a little bit greedy as well from Classicpro over here, and one of those walls are dangerously open. But the Spearman has been... No, the Spearman is still there. The Spearman is still there, and Classicpro is gonna try to snipe off the Spearman. But once again, his eco is messy, whereas Winchester's eco isn't. This is starting to play out just like the previous game, that everything seems to be alright for Classicpro, and he's not getting smashed. But it's not perfect, and it's just slightly better for Vinchester. He's now going to jump that Spearman, and we'll finish this army off. I don't like that he opened archers. And such a small thing can actually make a huge difference in an Empire Wars game. I feel like if he goes Scout, and then 2 skirms first, this wouldn't have happened, because 2 skirms would have been enough to defend here. Instead, he had like one or 2 archers, and 2 archers isn't enough to deal with 4 archers. So if your opponent is going like straight archers, you can't really go for archers with your second building when you open scouts. So there is going to be a defensive tower forced on Winchester's base, so I think that's sort of an achievement from Classicpro over here. The gold mine is going to be a little bit exposed to the skirmisher fire, so this is a good tower from Winch. But look at this! Winchester's clicking into Castle Age. Where is Classicpro? He's nowhere. Winchester went full greed mode right now. This was ultra mega greedy. I don't even know how he actually got up to Castle Age this fast. This is like super omega greedy play from Winchester. But this game might end in 2 minutes, not gonna lie. Because Classicpro, he's not gonna stop that army with feudal age units. Maybe if he has a bunch of skirmishers with +1/+1, maybe he can defend against the crossbowmen, but it's going to be some scary moments for him, that's for sure. He's getting close to clicking up himself, but he's gonna be like a solid 2 minutes behind. And on such a map where the majority of your wood lines are exposed to archers, it is pretty devastating to face this many crossbows over here. And Winchester could be up 2 games if Classicpro isn't able to defend against that one. He's clicking up right now, so my expectation of like a 2 minutes difference in between their Castle Age time seems more or less justified. Over here, Winchester doesn't want to engage this one right now, but Classicpro, I think he needs to keep adding skirmishers. It's double ranges. What is he up to? Like, it seems like it's going to be full elite skirm. Bulgarians don't have crossbows, so it's not even a remote thought from Classicpro to go for that, especially against Mayans. So it has to be elite skirm, although he's not making archers. And now he's making another stable. What is this trying to be? If he's trying to make art or skirms, he would be making them right now, but he's not doing that. The only reason why you would make a second range here and then idle it is if you play cav archers, and Bulgarian cav archers are not bad. But if you play cav archers, you don't make a second stable. And I don't think cav archers is a good play here either, so I'm somewhat puzzled by the decisions of Classicpro over here. And here come the crossbows. Defensive tower is up over there for Classicpro. Scouts could actually get in here. This could be nice for Classic Pro. He's on top of the gold mine from his opponent. He can pick off quite a lot of early crossbows, which is also a very nice thing to have. This is value for those scouts, ladies and gentlemen. Hashtag value. That's going to be just one villager picked off, but Classic Pro can continue to be annoying. The problem is this. How is he stopping those crossbows? I have no idea. Absolutely no idea. Like, I understand if what you're saying, Anon, is that he's doing double range skirms against the crossbows because he feels like he cannot actually handle it with one range. But if he's doing double range skirms, where are the skirms? There is no skirms here. He win a second range, but he's not doing anything with it. And that's what I'm not understanding. Like, at this point, considering he's adding a stable, I can only imagine one thing here. Maybe this was a wrong hotkey. Maybe he wanted to add 2 stables to go triple stable knights, but he messed up the hotkey. So, like, he's not using that archer range to absolutely anything, and now he added the 3rd stable, which would make me believe that he's doing this because he wants to go for triple stable knights, and he's got the upgrades for those knights as well. I don't think this ever wanted to be a double range skirms play here, or it might have been a double range skirm attempt, but then he changed his mind super fast. Anyways, Vinchester is going to be dangerous with that many crossbows. Remember that Mayans have the access to the obsidian arrows, and that's going to be a random villager that runs around and will get picked off. Or, yeah, like, honestly, that's the other thing, indeed. It could be a range bluff, indeed. Maybe he's faking range, and that could be an idea. I think that is actually more reasonable than a wrong hotkey. Maybe he intentionally made a second range, because what does Vinchester do if he sees the second range? He makes eagles. He makes an eagle transition. And maybe he wanted to do... Maybe he wanted to convince Vinchester that he needs to make an eagle transition, and then just smash the eagles with knights. Maybe that was the grand plan. That's actually smart, indeed. It's so smart I didn't even think about that. So, really, that could be an idea. To fake a range, and then go for knights, and hope that Vinchester switches into eagles, but I guess Vinchester didn't take the bait. He probably looked at the upgrades of the skirms and the numbers of the skirms, and he was like, yeah, there's no way. Now, this is the problem here for Classic Pro. He actually killed 1 or 2 wills from Vinch, but once again, it's the same scenario. He's losing a little bit more than Vinch. It's like they are fundamentally doing the exact same thing. It's a different build order, but the style of gameplay is completely similar. Poke and probe, get some villager kills here and there. Obviously, a lot of players are doing this, but if you just look at the 2 players, you can see how similar they play. And the problem is that Classic Pro is just a little bit weaker than Vinchester, and it's starting to show here pretty badly because those crossbows are starting to destroy everything. 36-6 army. I don't think this is happening for Classic Pro. That's a 2-0 here. He's off from gold. That's a 2-0, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, honestly, actually making skirms would have been better than this. I think he was scared of the eagle switch. I think that Classic Pro firmly believed that Vinchester is going to make an eagle switch. And that's something that is very, very common. The problem is that it is not straightforward that there is an eagle switch, especially not with Mayans. With Aztecs, it's much more common to go for an eagle switch because you have a great production, whereas for Mayans, you might want to continue with the cheap archers. So, it might have been either just Vinchester not taking the bait, or it might have been just him playing archers, or having the plan to play archers all along. I don't know, but at the end of the day, that's a 2-0 over here, and this is what I was talking about. It's Master versus Apprentice. I am pretty sure that Vinchester taught a lot of things to Classic Pro. They practiced a lot together, but when someone is teaching the other one to certain things, the thing is that the master will always look better. And yeah, as you were saying on chat, Classic Pro looked better against previous opponents. As I said, I feel like Classic Pro got the worst opponent. Got an opponent he plays hundreds of games against. Because if Classic Pro gets Dogao, let's say, or gets Doubt, or gets ACCM, or I just listed 3 names that already played in the quarterfinals, regardless of the result. If he gets any of these players, he I think has a better chance, because those players aren't familiar with his style. The problem for Classic Pro here is that Vinchester probably knows everything about Classic Pro's playstyle, because they're probably reviewing recorded games together, they see what the weaknesses are, and whatnot. When you're getting coached by someone, that someone that is coaching you is gonna have a huge advantage over you, because he knows everything that you know, and he also knows what you don't know. And that's the advantage that Vinchester is having here, and this is why I feel like Classic Pro is gonna have a hard time against Vinchester, because Vinchester just knows everything about Classic Pro's playstyle, weaknesses, tendencies, so he's gonna have an extremely good chance of predicting what Classic Pro is thinking, and maybe that's why. Maybe they had practice games before tournament and they figured that, hey, an ego switch from the Mezzo player is more than reasonable on this map. Guess what? Maybe that's why Vinchester doesn't actually switch into egos here, because they talked about that on practice, for example. There are so many options here for discussion. And let's see, we have Atacama now. So game number 3 over here, second home map of Classic Pro over here. And Atacama is very reminiscent of Haboob, the game where I think Classic Pro played insanely good yesterday. So I can see Slavs and Magyars, regardless of the civilization characteristics, I can see Classic Pro winning this game, because I think it's one of his stronger maps alongside Haboob, and I actually like Magyars here a lot more. Magyars will be just as good, if not better, with their scouts opening than Slavs are. Slavs will have the stronger eco, but one thing that Magyars have over Slavs is that Magyars have a much cleaner archer build than Slavs do. And it's not guaranteed that we are going to see scouts from Classic Pro the whole game. So it might even be an archer opening directly, which I would dislike, because, you know, an archer opening would actually make you very slow, but he's keeping villagers on gold and now dropping a stable. In that case, I'm not sure if I understand what he's planning to do, and apparently he's just late sending those villagers away from the gold. So it's stable versus stable that Classic Pro is. Actually, Classic Pro is playing Slavs. What am I talking about? I thought Classic Pro is Magyars and Vinchester is Slavs, but I confused the two players. I still believe that Vinchester's Magyars is something I like a lot more than this Slavic play over here. Both players will try denying the stable of the opponent, or at least delaying it a tiny bit. And looks like Vinchester is going to try and commit to a villager. Snipe over here, gets a snipe. Oh man, Vinchester is playing extremely sharp today. And it's not like Classic Pro is playing bad. He's just always a little bit behind, and that just piles up by the end of the game. And as right now, he already lost one villager over here, and he's gonna be Slavs. Slavic farming eco is going to kick in, but it has to kick in through numbers and not quality of those units. And that's the problem for Classic Pro. Right now, numbers will be even, and the quality will be better for Vinchester. Plus, Vinchester also has cheaper scouts. So in a scout versus scout war, the Slavic farming eco might not show, because even though you get more resources income, or like more resource income for your scouts, the opponent has a cheaper scout. So at the end of the day, you will be spending an even portion or even proportion of your eco to your army. Anyways, I love Vinchester dropping the outpost, making sure that he's not gonna get raided from the flank. Meanwhile, Classic Pro is trying to wall his base, which seems a tiny bit ambitious, but it could actually work out for him. We already have defensive spearman on this wood line in the middle for Classic Pro, and that is gonna be an overchop, potentially at the worst moment. There's already an overchop here, and there is nothing that Classic Pro can do to save this villager. I believe another one bites the dust, and let's look. Actually, yeah, Vinchester is going to get that. Meanwhile, Classic Pro trying to get some damage done, eats some hits from a spearman on that central wood line, and it looks pretty bad once again for Classic Pro. That's a 2 villagers difference already, and it seems like Classic Pro is once again just trying to do all the good things. It's just a matter of his opponent is doing the exact same things, just better. As I'm saying that, that's gonna be 2 hits on a scout, not something that's ideal for Vinchester over here. Tries to isolate 1 scout from Classic Pro. It's some nice hits landed on top of there. 10 to 11 is the military count. Right now, I think what Classic Pro would massively benefit from right now is either Bloodlines or +1 attack. He decides by Bloodlines. He doesn't have Horse Color on his farms. That's gonna have a huge impact on his eco later on, so his farming efficiency is by far not as good as it is for Vinchester, and I think Vinchester is pulling villagers to make a tower here. Yeah, here's the tower. Using the Spearman and the villagers, just making sure that that tower goes up. In the meanwhile, Vinchester is waiting for the Bloodlines upgrade to kick in, and here it goes, and now he's gonna try to raid the eco of Vinch. This is actually... This might be better for Classic Pro, honestly. He still has 2 Spearmen over here against the Scouts. Those Scouts have +1/+1, but it's tower versus counter tower, and I feel like both towers will eventually go up. I'm not sure if Vinchester can kill villagers here. He will definitely try to, but in the meanwhile, Classic Pro is inside Vinchester's eco, and this is like ultimate jackpot here. You can start killing villagers. And the tower for Classic Pro isn't going up though. No more spears. It actually is up now. The problem now is that Classic Pro Spearman is gonna get sniped down by the opponent's tower here, and Classic Pro isn't doing damage. Once again, he isn't taking a huge amount of damage, but he's just unable to do any kind of damage right now. That's the problem. So this would have been a moment where he could have used the Bloodlines on his scouts to get some villager kills, but Vinchester has like insane amounts of spearmen in every position inside his base, and that allows him to just defend against the scouts. And it doesn't look that bad, but if you add up the fact that it's Horse Color, it's Slavic farming, it's 2 villagers advantage right now for Vinchester, what you end up with is saying that, okay, Classic Pro is once again behind, and he's gonna need something to come back into this one, like this. Like this, but it's once again just 1 villager killed, so I think there could have been a lot more villagers killed over there. And he's getting scared of 2 spearmen. I feel like at this stage of the game he might have... I could have understood if he commits to that, to be honest. A lot of those scouts are very, very weak. And honestly, he could intercept these villagers. It's only 2 villagers inside, but he has to get those kills. Those are like must-haves right now. Those villagers are not supposed to escape. Looking at the food eco though, look at Vinch. Look at Vinch. Once again, doing the same thing, but Vinchester is just slightly better at that. And if Vinchester gets a market up, he's gonna buy himself Castle Age. First 2 knights usually wins the game, and that is going to end up being a GG from Classic Pro once again. He needs to inflict huge damage on Vinchester in like the next 1 minute or so. It is very interesting that Vinchester is only using 11 villagers on farms. He's so heavy on gold. I wonder if this is intentional or just a mistake. And the problem here for Classic Pro is many of those scouts are weak, but this is exactly the type of fight that he wanted. The type of fight that he needed, and Bloodlines is just coming in for Vinchester. But no Castle Age on the horizon for him, and this is exactly what Classic Pro needed. A huge raid to swing the battle back in his favor, and the forward archer range will also come in. Now his woodline is going to be exposed here, and that's still going to make the situation very messy. But Vinchester has lost many of his villagers on the woodline. Vinchester has an insane amount of gold in the bank, but he's not really doing much with it. Classic Pro has a lot more balanced eco, and that helps quite a bit here. So the fact that Classic Pro's eco is a lot more balanced helps immensely, and this has been a little bit overly greedy from Vinchester if you ask me, or just a misclick. Sent out the villagers here, and that's 3 villagers killed for nothing. The first game where Vinchester is making some huge mistakes, I would say. The raid from Classic Pro is really good, and I feel like maybe Classic Pro just needs to warm up. Maybe he just needs some confidence, but this is a game that Classic Pro must win in this series. I mean, this is his second home map, he's down by 2 games, he can't afford to lose a game where he killed that many villagers on the woodline. He has a nice and comfy 7 villagers lead over here. Vinchester has an insane amount of gold. His eco balance is like very wacky right now. Still, no attack upgrade on those scouts, but there is an archer that is trying to snipe down the spearman. Archer should focus on the spears. There is so many things to manage for Classic Pro that I believe that he's just being overwhelmed here. He can actually take that fight, and he's dropping a tower on a Vinchester's woodline, so it is about wood eco denial in this map, and it looks like Classic Pro still has the upper hand. I think the main reason why he has the upper hand is because his eco actually isn't focused that much on gold. Like, it's ridiculous how much gold Vinchester has in the bank, and that eco unbalance is a huge deficit right now for Vinchester. The fact that he's floating 1,200 gold is crazy, because he doesn't have food to make more scouts, he doesn't have food to make more spears. Classicpro's eco is also a little bit messy over here, but it's just a little bit better right now. And Vinchester needs to get something done with that gold now, because it's pretty much just sitting there in the bank and not doing anything. Quite a lot of spears on the field for Vinch with +1/+1. Nice micro from him picking off the archers to prevent the spearman from getting killed. And that's a bad fight for Classicpro now. Vinchester is gonna move to the other wood line over here, and I think Classicpro is going to retreat to the safety of his tower. If Vinchester actually balanced out his eco, he would be in a much better spot. I mean, I think he can flat out buy Castle Age here. I think he will do that now. Market is on the way. It's funny how he's making it with one villager when he obviously sees that he's got 1,500 gold in the bank. Yeah, absolutely. If you're Vinchester, you're trying to buy yourself into Castle Age for market. You will lose some villagers to the feudal age pressure, but Classicpro is mainly scouts with a few archers. So scout and spear works nicely here, just like Vinchester is doing. And as I said, first to castle usually wins the game. And we might not even see that, to be honest, because now Vinchester has even military count compared to Classicpro. And as I said, Vinch just buying castle here. It's Slavic farming power, that's the thing. So the eco will be stronger for Slavs, so Magyars really have to capitalize on their better scouts. And actually no, what am I talking about? Vinchester is, for whatever reason I'm confusing the civs here for a second time. Vinchester is Magyars, and Classicpro is Slavs. In this case, I have absolutely no idea how it is so low food count for Classicpro. He's got 9 on stone, but this is still weird. I don't know what you guys are doing over there. Doing some dancing, like actual dancing. Actual dancing. You want some music, friends? Oh, they fixed themselves. So, this game, theoretically, Classicpro, yes, has a big eco lead. But what is he gonna do against Knights? Nothing. Knights will just rate his eco to absolute destruction. And like, villagers like this is just screaming for one knight killing 7 villagers, basically. So, well, this is looking bad for Classicpro. I just don't know how Vinchester was able to get this good resources in for himself. The only thing I can think about is that maybe Classicpro didn't have horse colors, so he had to keep more on wood to keep the same amount of farms going. And that maybe Vinchester's cheap scouts are really showing like that. This is the problem. This is a huge problem for Classicpro right now. He's not even close to getting up to Castle Age. He can't even buy himself up. And look at this. Triple stable knights, even a TC. And I mean, Vinchester is beating this aggression back with scouts, let alone knights. When the first few knights come out, this is like Omega game over. There is a 15 villagers lead, sure, but I mean, what is Classicpro going to do exactly to stop these knights? Nothing. That's going to be minus a couple of villagers over here as well. Knights, or they're getting +2 attack because they're Magyar knights, and there is the GG from Classicpro. Looking ugly so far. I mean, on one side, I think it's a huge achievement from Classicpro that he's able to play on a level that's comparable to Vinchester, because he's not playing bad. But he is not playing good enough to beat Vinchester here. And they're very similar with their play style, their thought process. And the thing is that in 1 year I can see Classicpro beating Vinchester, but not here. And if I remember, this clan actually had an internal tournament, the Swords Cup, and the Swords Cup finals were played between Vinchester and Classicpro lost 3-0 in a best of 5 to Vinch. So, of course, the settings are different, a lot of things are different. And Classic Pro had 1000 more food, 400 more wood, 700 more stone, and yeah, 700 more gold for Vinch. I honestly don't know where that significant eco lead comes from for Vinch. Maybe it's idle time? No, it's not idle time. Village idle time is 58.30 and 53.10. Same thing. I have no clue where that comes from. I have absolutely no clue. Because the eco numbers are very close, KDs are very close. So it seems weird that Vinchester was able to accumulate that much more resources compared to Classic Pro that early. When both of the players went for the same build and, you know, theoretically, Classic Pro should have the Civ with a stronger eco. Anyways, we are gonna have Mayans as well for Vinchester and Magyars as well. Classic Pro, one game away from getting eliminated over here. As I said, I think it's already a huge achievement for him that he pulled an upset against Villes, and I feel like based on the previous tournament performances, Vinchester is probably a better fit into the main event than Classic Pro is, but I feel like bright future could be ahead of Classic Pro if he keeps improving like that. So Bulgarians is gone as well for Classic Pro, and we will get ready for what could be the final game of this series. Alright, so the final home map for Classic Pro is Lowland. What about Lowland here? I think Lowland is the place where Vinchester is leaving Cumans to. But he even has Tatars. So, could be Tatars or could be Cumans versus Chinese maybe? Maybe Britons? It's tricky. It's really tricky. Is Vinchester gonna go for Cumans and go for an eco-heavy approach? Or is he gonna go for Tatars and go for a military-focused approach? Both of those are possible, and the players are almost ready to get going. So we will jump into game number 4 very soon. I'll have to update the score over here as well. Classic Pro, 3-game deficit over his opponent. So, let's get going. I believe we have a game. Let me check. Yes, we do. So, this could be the final game of the series. Classic Pro versus Vinchester on the third quarterfinals of the Red Bull Wololo free qualifiers. The last series of the day will follow this one. It's going to be Chris versus Daniel. But before that, we will have Vinchester versus Classic Pro over here. Goths versus Chinese. Vinchester is one of the players who really loves Goths. He's one of the best Gothic players I've seen out there. Chinese for Classic Pro. I think Classic Pro was probably trying to counterpick the either Cumans or Tatars pick here. And I'm pretty sure that Vinchester is picking Cumans here. Or even, well, he has Tatars still, but regardless of where he's going to use it, I feel like those were probably serving also as a bait to make Classic Pro think that it's going to be Tatars or Cumans, because the majority of the people would actually think it is, and that's why probably Vinch went with Goths. So he baited Classic Pro into thinking that he's going to play Cumans or Tatars, and now he goes for Goths. I'm curious what the plan is, but this map is relatively suitable for what is basically a fast castle play, and Vinchester is very, very good with Goths once he gets to a strong castle age position. We're gonna have Vinchester on the southern part of the map as Red Gods on the north, it is going to be Classic Pro playing as Chinese. And, well, let's see what Classic Pro decides to do. The problem here is that if you open archers, you know, just to get some damage done in H2, those archers will pretty much be useless against Huskars later on. So the thing is that I feel like Vinchester can actually afford to just play skirmisher defense into Huskars here pretty fast. And this map is open enough for a Gothic player to be able to inflict significant damage in like early to mid castle age already. So I'm not necessarily a big fan of the archer range opening from Classic Pro. It's really hard. I feel like this matchup is just not favoring the Chinese here, but I would still... Like, the problematic part is that you don't know exactly what Vinchester is going to do. Vinchester could open archers, and he is going for that. Technically, Vinchester could just wall up and say, okay, I'm gonna go Castle Age, and I'm gonna go for Huskars. But Classic Pro can't assume that and just go to Castle Age himself. Classic Pro has to be prepared to archers pushing his base, so he has to make a few archers. Normally, I would prefer to have a stable here, because against early Huskars, knights will be probably better for Classic Pro, but it's a matter of you have to be prepared to deal with archers that come from Vinchester, especially considering Vinchester has a super forward gold, so he's gonna have to be able to defend that one. I'm not sure if this was the original plan all time from Vinchester, or if it's just a reaction to the bad gold that he's having at the front, but regardless of that, I feel like this is probably a safer way of playing what it will ultimately end up being a Gothic power play of Huskars and late game or even mid game spam. I don't think that we're going to see that much booming from Vinch, and probably an early addition of Huskars, or maybe Pike and Siege could also be something that he considers. Anyways, right now he's just chilling on this hill with his archers, which makes me believe that he doesn't even want to do damage with these and just wants to camp this hill and prevent his gold miners from getting killed, which is smart. I'm okay with that. And now he's progressing towards Castle Age. Other side, Classic Pro. He doesn't have horse color, but he's Chinese, so he can get away with that. Other side, we have Gods for horse color. So this is relatively even ecos right now between the two players. And if you look at Classic Pro, he's got a slight advantage going into Castle Age here, because he didn't go for that many archers, I believe. Yeah, it's 5 archers from Vinch, and he is still making 1 archer and 2 more skirms. Whereas for Classic Pro, it's only 4 archers, so Classic Pro is actually going to beat Vinchester into Castle Age over here. And a second range is coming in, Vinchester will be able to scout that without any problems. So, archers coming in here from Vinchester, and they will be able to deny the second range, or at least delay it for some time. So that's already sort of an achievement for Vinchester over here, and he is forcing the villagers off from the berries, which is a little bit annoying for Classic Pro. Not something that's going to completely cripple Classic Pro's eco, but the problem for Classic Pro is that what is he going to do with those crossbows when the Huskars show up? Like, that army will soon become pretty obsolete, and that's not something that you want to see if you are Classic Pro. That's his real problem right now. So yeah, it's double ranges, and the crossbows could do quite a lot of damage, but as you see, Vinchester, he's idling his TC a tiny bit so he can click up, but he's about to go up right now, sending villagers to the back gold mine. So he understands that crossbows will start pushing his gold pretty soon. And I like that he's taking fights with his archers, because he probably knows that Classic Pro is already up, so he wants to trade off the archers and make sure that Classic Pro cannot hit his gold mine, and he's doing everything he can to take all the gold from this gold mine before this would be exposed to any aggression of archers. And Vinchester already 4 villagers on stone. As I said, this is probably going to be Huskars right away for him, and let's see if he can intercept some reinforcements here. Do you think Classic Pro has a chance in Qual 2 with that performance? Nope, I don't think so. There is so many places where you can slip. The problem is that the second qualifiers will have so many high-level players, and you will have to, I don't know, like, let's say you get to the round of 32. You're gonna have to beat a player like Tim, for example, which is not obvious that you're going to beat him. You might, but it's not guaranteed. It's never guaranteed. And then you get someone like, I don't know, let's say Vivi. Once again, even if you actually are confident about your skills and you have good game plan, it's not 100% you beat him, because a lot of things can go wrong. One hole, one misplay and whatnot. There is one villager dead from Vinchester. So the amount of players, the amount of high-level players that will try to compete in the next one will pretty much make it nearly impossible for these up-and-coming players to make big runs. I'm going to draw a comparison in between this and Angelina Jolie. Angelina Jolie actually got matched up against Lan in the round of 32s. Lan, one of the stronger players in the competitive Age of Empires scene, somewhat struggles with consistency as Vinchester is getting a lead skirm for some more defense, but he's just waiting until he can drop his castle. So, still, probably 99% of people would have expected Lan winning that. Angelina Jolie beats Lan, and you would think, oh yeah, AJ is strong, right? He was strong, but then he loses to Bars. He was leading 2 games to Bars, and then Bars comes back 3-2. And boom, that's it. The more high-level players you have in the qualifiers, and that's going to be the case for the second set of qualifiers next weekend, the higher it is the chance you will stumble somewhere. And I feel like, especially in Empire Wars, where the meta is much less developed and many players can come up with some nice, surprising strategies, oftentimes the top 30 players are all actually able to make it competitive and surprising as players. As you saw, for example, Angelina Jolie beating Lan is the same thing here. So for even like a player like Lan, he needs to watch out that, hey, even if I play against an opponent who I would beat probably 9 out of 10 games in random map, there's a chance I'm going to fall to him. And because of that, it's going to be, I don't think it's possible for Classicpro to qualify. I can see Classicpro beating some high-level players. The thing I don't see for Classicpro is that he's able to consistently get through 2 or 3 very high-level players that he might actually get matched up with. Anyways, we are gonna have 3 TCs boom over here for Vinchester, and he is a big boomer. And the problem is that, what is Classicpro going to do with archers and crossbows here? I feel like this is just a slow march to death for Classicpro. Like, the castle is already coming up here, and the thing is that the siege workshop is going to accomplish nothing. Absolute nothing. Even if Classicpro picks off some villagers, we're talking about 11 villagers lead for Vinch, and he's absolutely not getting punished for playing what is otherwise a very greedy play from him. Once again, I have a strong feeling that he predicted Chinese here. I am fairly certain that he predicted Chinese, and he's picking gods because of that. And you know that your opponent is going to try and play archers here, so you play gods that is gonna have the Huskars. You go basically skirmisher into Huskar in this one, and I feel like Vinchester is not even going to bother adding a lot of Huskars early on. He's just going to defend, boom, and maybe start snowballing the game in Imperial. Now, that being said, you don't have a huge amount of gold inside your base, so it's not like you have an infinite time to wait. But Vinchester definitely has the time to wait, and there is a second barracks as well, which means Anarchy is going to be on the way pretty soon. This is actually a weak segment of Vinchester's wars and could actually be punished by Classicpro, but at this point I think Vinchester has enough skirms to take a good enough engagement that actually can hold this section of the wall, and indeed there is our technology to make Huskars available on the barracks as well. That was a beautiful mango hit, by the way, from Classicpro. Another relatively decent mango hit, nice splits by Vinchester, tries to finish off the mangonel. The walls are open, and the micro is once again beautiful from Vinch. Wasn't the best, but the mangonel goes down. And that's, I think, what matters for Vinchester, because look at those majestic boys. It's only +1 defense, but Vinchester is gonna have the chance to reroll here. Once again, 2 or 3 villagers may go down, but does it matter for Vinch, who has a 19 villager lead? And at this point, is just waiting for the opportunity to snowball the game with Huskars. Classic Pro is playing with 2 town centers. Vinchester has 3. Classic Pro is gonna be able to punish Vinch for playing this greedy, but Huskars, well, that's the end of the story, basically. So, especially with that many skirms in the party, it's just gonna be awfully hard to stop these Huskars. And ever since I've been seeing just the identical cast lage times and like no super aggressive play from Classic Pro, I felt like, yeah, this is exactly what's gonna happen. Vinchester is going to snowball the game with Huskars, and at this point, the best thing Classic Pro can do with this army is kill villagers with it. This is why there is a spiritual dance over here from Vinchester to avoid the arrows, and that feels like a GG. Like, what is Classic Pro going to do here? He is going to make knights, but he needs some time to tech into knights, and Vinchester already has the barracks, just needs to make pikemen. His pikemen will benefit from his Huskar upgrades, whereas his knights will not benefit from all the investment into archers. I don't understand why Vinchester or Classic Pro invested into +2 defense on the archers. That makes 0 sense to me. Like, you know that your archers will become obsolete very, very soon. Why invest this heavily into the upgrades on them when you would really need the resources for these upgrades? And there's already pikemen coming out here. Once again, I just have a strong feeling that at the end of the day, this is going to end up being an ugly snowball of Gothic infantry. I mean, it's 12 villagers lead, no horse color on the side of Classic Pro. These guys even have kind of built-in arson, so they will be able to melt buildings as well. And it's not like Classic Pro can run back, because Classic Pro also needs that gold in that valley. This is not a good fight for Vinchester, but this is type of fight where he says, okay, I can take that. Because he's killing the crossbows, and look at this. You ain't stopping this. Classic Pro knows that. GG. Feels bad. Feels bad. I was looking forward to this Master versus Apprentice matchup, and I feel like I got what I expected. Vinchester, he's the one that teaches a lot of things to Classic Pro. And because of that, he knows probably every thought that goes through Classic Pro's head. It's insanely hard to play against someone's coach. Even if the two players are now on the same level, the coach will probably know a lot more about the Apprentice's playstyle than you would expect. And that's exactly what we're seeing here for Vinch. He seems like he was able to just get into the head of Classic Pro, and either like in the Arabia game, they just did the same thing, but Vinchester was better doing that. Or here, it seems like he just flat out knew exactly how Classic Pro is going to react to the draft he had, and he knew exactly that, okay, it's going to be an archer play, and he's going to punish that with gods. With that, Vinchester is the third qualifier into the main event of Red Bull Wololo 3. In fact, in the last 2 rounds, he lost 0 games. He 3-0'd Fire and 4-0'd Classic Pro now. Congrats to Vinchester. This is his ticket into the main event.